Listen, I don't know how much time I have until it finds me again, but it will. Listen, you have to stop watching right now. Stop watching this video. Shut it off. Don't come back. Whatever you do, don't. It doesn't matter what I have to say. It doesn't matter what I have to talk about today, this week. Just forget it. Okay? Just go. While you still have time, go. But if you're going to keep watching, which some of you might, I've tried to leave a message for you. It's in the chapters, okay? It's in the chapters. Hopefully you can figure it out. It's there. And if you can figure out the message, you might be able to do something. Maybe. Remember, knowledge is power. Always remember that. And hopefully I'll be all right. Hopefully I can get out of this on my own. But if not, then you know what you have to. Did you guys hear that? No. You know what you have to do, right? Okay, good. Remember what I said. Stop watching. Shut it off. Just go. Save yourself. It'll be fine. No. No. Oh, come on, no. No. Hello, and welcome to Chapter 17 of Book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today, we're going to be talking about a wonderful little book that you all should own. It is called John Dies at the End, and it is by David Wong. Now, what is it about, you may ask, and why should I, in particular, go out and buy this book? Well, it is one part comedy, one part it's really hard to describe. In a way, it's kind of horror, but in a way, it's not. Let me put it this way. According to the back, they have one of these things. Where is it? Where is it? Ah, yes. Here it is. By Don Coscarelli, director of Phantasm 1 through 5 and Bubba Hotep. He says that David Wong, the author of this book, is like a mashup of Douglas Adams and Stephen King. Another thing I remember reading is in here. Where is it? Here it is. John Dies at the End is like an H.P. Lovecraft tale if Lovecraft were into poop and fart jokes. I mean, just imagine that. That's kind of what this is. It is one part comedy, it is one part Lovecraftian horror, and it is one part wondering if the character you're reading about is actually insane. That all this might just be happening in his head. And all that combines into a perfect storm for a book. Now, it is about several things. It is about unknowable, alien, monstrous evil that is so beyond scope of the scope of the human mind to comprehend. You are insignificantly small compared to that, and that's where you get the Lovecraft in. It is about two guys, two losers, I guess you could say, who end up, because they happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, are the ones that are going to save the world. Now, and it's also about the soy sauce. Now, what's the soy sauce, you might add? Well, that's the important part. That's the thing that I really need to tell you. So listen up very carefully, because I'm only going to say this once. The soy. Hello, and welcome to Chapter 8 of Book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today we're going to be talking about a wonderful little book called John Dies at the End. It's a nice little book. It's been made into a movie, which was pretty interesting. But I think you'll all agree that this book is one that needs to be on your shelves. So you should go and buy it right now. And that's really all you need to know about the soy sauce. So now, what's next? Well, you've got David Wong. David Wong is the main character in the book. He's the one telling the story. His best friend is a guy named John. John dies at the end. And it's all about how they get involved in everything. There's a lot of weird stuff that happens. There's a lot of bizarreness. It has one of the best best introductions in a book I have ever read. The first page and a half is basically, it sets the tone for the entire story, which you'll see about once we get to the end. Now, this book is also interesting because you see this lovely picture. John dies at the end. There's a little picking up the pages, and you see the little there. But you take it and you turn it. Oh, there's David Wong, the author. John dies at the end, and you turn a little more. Oh my God! Look at that. It's a severed arm. And there's a QR code on the back. You can find out more. It has a whole bunch of things. And it tells you right on the back that you shouldn't have touched the book with your bare hands. Don't put it down. It's too late. They're watching you. I mean, creepy. Now, it starts off, it gets into things with a little bit of an idea of what Dave and John do. And then you find out it segues a little. And you've got David at a Chinese restaurant, and he ends up being there to meet with a reporter by the name of Arnie Blonstone. And Arnie Blonstone comes in, sits down, they start talking. David Wong wants to tell him his story, the story of all these weird things, all these unknowable evil, the soy sauce, and all that. And so he starts telling him this tale to hopefully get him to help, to publish it, to get the word out there so that people know what's at stake. Now, the really interesting thing is how it all starts. So, how it all starts is at a party. Just at some party in the middle of nowhere. And David ends up meeting this Jamaican fellow who is, he thinks, obviously, fake Jamaican. He's got a totally fake accent. He's probably a drug dealer, blah, 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 etc., etc. And that's where things start to get really weird because you see, hello, and welcome to Chapter 5 of Book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today, we're going to be talking about John Dies at the End, a marvelous little book by David Wong, who is a really good writer. I think everyone should be exposed to him. So if you haven't read this book, you should go out and buy it right now. And that is where the dog comes from. So, amazing, right? I know. So, there's other characters involved. There's the police station. There's the fact that everyone that was involved with this Jamaican fellow ends up dead. There's bizarre creepiness that just happens in this book. There's a room in one of the settings in the book early on that the entire room has been painted. Floor, walls, furniture, ceiling, it's all been painted to look like you're stepping out into the outside, into the snowy wilderness. And the perspective is so perfect that it looks so real that you think it is. And it's just amazing the amount of detail. There's a glass sitting on the end table that has a crack in it. And the crack has been used. The painting ties into that so that the crack looks like part of a glint of sunshine off of ice. And it's just really amazing, except when you get to the point. Hello, and welcome to Chapter 12 of Book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today, we're going to be talking about John Dies at the End. A wonderful, dark little book full of macabre, bizarre details, which I think you'll all enjoy. So, If you don't own it right now, you should go out and buy it immediately. I'll wait. Beginning with the meat monster, you see that's where you first really hear about the guy named Marconi. Now Marconi, he's an interesting dude. He is this mystical guy on late night cable who's there to tap into the spirit world and knows all about the beyond. And from the way the book kind of describes him, he looks very much. He's very much the kind of guy who is. You expect him to be the fake, the shyster, the huckster, and all this and that, but he's actually right spot on. He knows all about this stuff. So these two guys kind of get involved with him a little bit. Then there's the dog. I mentioned the dog earlier, I think. And the dog, Molly, the dog is something that's extremely weird. It's an amazing dog, though. One of the best characters in the book is that dog. I don't want to get too much into it because that's a bit of a spoiler, and I don't want to do that. But he tackled all this stuff with just an amazing attention to detail and amazing attention to realistic. I mean, despite the fact we're talking about ancient evils and blah blah blah, he really tackles the realistic side of things, and he makes the characters very believable in how they. Hello and welcome to chapter 16 of book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting little book called John Dies at the End, and it is a wonderful book that you should all go out and get right now. And that's the really interesting thing. I mean, David Wong isn't even this guy's real name, and John isn't even John's real name. He says it right here on the back. My name is David Wong. My best friend is John. Those names are fake. You may want to change yours. They're not real. The town that all this happens in, he never names it. It's always square bracket, undisclosed square bracket every time they mention the town name, because it's always there to protect where they're from. There's a lot of weird things that go on in this town too, and a lot of it happens over the course of a long period of time. There's months where nothing happens in the story, and they kind of skip over that and gloss over it. There seems to be some sort of almost an erasure from reality where you just no longer exist. There's characters that are kind of mentioned but aren't really mentioned because they no longer exist, but the people there kind of remember them in a way. A lot of really bizarre things happening. And I mean, I cannot stress enough how amazing this book is and how bizarre and strange. I mean, reading it had me laughing out loud one moment and had me being thoroughly creeped out and disturbed the next, thinking to myself, am I going to be able to get to sleep tonight? Because I'm going to be thinking about that. And that's the amazing thing. Now, the movie, there is an actual movie, so I suppose I should touch on that a little bit because I have watched it. Now, the interesting thing about the movie is Happy New Year, Internet, and welcome to Chapter 13 of Book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting little book called John Dies at the End. Now, I think you'll all agree, once I start talking about it, that it's an amazing book and you'll love it. So you should all go out and buy it right now. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing. I mean, just because you have a movie that, while being very true and very realistic, not realistic, listen to me, very true and very faithful to the source material, because every scene in the movie happens in the book. Not exactly the same, but mostly. I'd say they got about a 90 to 95% faithfulness to this. They had to change a few things for brevity's sake, etc., etc. I understand that. But they played the movie a lot along the lines of comedy. They went that way, which doesn't necessarily make it a bad thing. The movie was a great watch. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the heck out of it. But the book delves into darker territory. It has some disturbing things that happen, some disturbing events, thought processes. Like I said, the very beginning of the book, that introduction, really makes you wonder about the characters that you're reading about. So yeah, there's a lot of that in there, but it's pretty interesting. So yeah, I definitely I definitely would highly recommend it. Oh yes, one more. Hello, and welcome to Chapter 5 of Book 1 of You Should Be Reading. Today, we're going to be talking about John Dies at the End. Now, this book is his book, and you should go and buy it right now. It's just the interesting thing. I mean, come on, Scooby-Doo glasses. Am I right? Am I right? Yeah. Now, one more thing before I leave you off with my usual reading. There is a sequel book out, which I have bought, but I have yet to read. But that's on my list very soon, and it is called "This Book is Full of Spiders." Charming, isn't it? So yes. With that note, I will leave you with a bit of reading, and I think you should all read John Dies at the End. So, the prologue, or at least the beginning of the prologue. Solving the following riddle will reveal the awful secret behind the universe, assuming you do not go utterly mad in the attempt. If you already happen to know the awful secret behind the universe, feel free to skip ahead. Let's say you have an axe, just a cheap one from Home Depot. On one bitter winter day, you use said axe to behead a man. Don't worry, the man was already dead. Or maybe you should worry, because you're the one who shot him. He had been a big, twitchy guy with veiny skin, stretched over swollen biceps, a tattoo of a swastika on his tongue, teeth filed into razor-sharp fangs. You know the type. And you're chopping off his head because, even with 8 bullet holes in him, you're pretty sure he's about to spring back to his feet and eat the look of terror right off your face. On the follow-through of the last swing, though, the handle of the axe snaps in a spray of splinters. You now have a broken axe. So after a long night of looking for a place to dump the man in his head, you take a trip into town with your axe. You go to the hardware store, explaining away the dark reddish stains on the broken handle as barbecue sauce. You walk out with a brand new handle for your axe. The repaired axe sits undisturbed in your garage until the spring, when on one rainy morning you find in your kitchen a creature that appears to be a foot-long slug with a bulging egg sac on its tail. Its jaws bite one of your forks in half with what seems like very little effort. You grab your trusty axe, chop the thing into several pieces. On the last blow, however, the axe strikes a metal leg of the overturned kitchen table and chips a notch right out in the middle of the blade. Of course, a chipped head means yet another trip to the hardware store. They sell you a brand new head for your axe. As soon as you get home, you meet the reanimated body of the guy you beheaded earlier. He's also got a new head, stitched on with what looks like plastic weed trimmer line, and it's wearing that unique expression of "you're the man who killed me last winter" resentment that one so rarely encounters in everyday life. You brandish your axe. The guy takes a long look at the weapon, with his squishy, rotting eyes, and in a gargly voice he screams, "That's the same axe that beheaded me." Is he right? Now that is how you begin a book. That is amazing. It took me a second read through to get it, what it was talking about, because you replace the axe handle and you replace the axe head, so it's not the same axe. But is it? Because it's still your axe. Just because it's got a new handle and got a new head, is the soul of the axe still there? It makes you wonder things. It's an ancient riddle, dealing with the souls of items and whatnot. And the fact that he included it as a way to begin this, with a tale of beheading a guy, it sets the tone for the entire book. So yes, this week, you should be reading John Dies at the End. Until next time.